Greetings, pilgrims, and welcome to another episode of the Polygon Pilgrimage. And today, I have something pretty exciting for you. We are creating this sci-fi tracking window. So, short story behind this is that for my portfolio project, I have a bit of a space station, and I have this window which will look out into space. And outside, I have a couple of things that are Easter eggs. And I wanted to be able to get some information on them for you to kind of tell you what they are in case you're not familiar. And in order to do so, I wanted a really cool effect for the information to show up on this window. So if I go ahead and hit play in here, let's jump into the world here. I can run around the room, and as you can see, these are our panels from last week. Just kind of using those as a quick decoration. And it's just a small room, just for decoration purposes. But this is our main focus. So we have this window. You can see here, just a little bit of decoration holding the window in place. There we go. And we have these astral bodies outside in space. So if I click on one of them, you'll see we get this cursor. And this cursor will follow the exact center of that object, a direct line between that object and us, always. And this cursor is actually sliding along the glass. So as I move along, if I move over to the far side of the room and I look back, he is actually in direct line. It starts to look like he's not. And that's because of the nature of the glass. You can see the glass is distorting our environment here, and it even reflects in our surfaces because it is a light. So this is the effect here. No matter how far I get from it in the room, it's always pointing directly at my object. And then if I click over on this object, we'll move over to that object. So this works for anything in our space that has a particular tag to it. And I'm going to walk you through exactly how I created all of this. So let's go ahead and get started with that. Okay, so we'll drop out of our preview mode here. And let's take a look at what this takes. So, working our way across, we're going to start with the actual cursor itself, which, if you are observant, like I'm sure you are, you see here I have the window selected, and we can also see this square highlighted underneath the floor. And yes, that is our cursor. Our cursor is actually just kind of hidden from view, and then it pops into place when we need it. So let's look at how we created that first. So if we go over to the BP for the cursor, this is our blueprint. I have a scene object here, which I did that trick where you overwrite the default by creating a scene object, and then you just drag and drop it over top of the default, and that gets rid of the little cube, the sphere. So just a default scene, and then all I want is a static mesh, and this is just a basic plane that comes with Unreal. This is nothing fancy. I didn't import a model, nothing. So it's just a basic plane. I called it cursor. And I changed some settings here, changed the location, I brought it out a little bit. The rotation should be flat 90, but I think that's because of our blueprint. And then I changed the size here, and this determines how big it appears on the glass. And as you can see here, it's a default plane. And then we have our material, which we'll talk about in a moment. And this has no collision, doesn't need any, but it does need to generate overlap events, so we'll check that. Okay? So now over to our event graph. There's nothing in the construction script. No need for anything here. In the event graph, you've seen this in my previous videos. This is a simple rotator. So on event tick, we're going to have a variable here that is a float rotation speed. If you're not familiar how to create variables, you just click over here on the plus variable button, and then I can give it a name. So let's say new. I can give it a type, and I'm going to say float. Now you notice I can't set a default value yet. It says please compile the blueprint. If I compile, then I can give it a default. So I'm going to give this a default 5. So there we go. And then to use this, all I did was I would drag this off of the scene and say get. I want to get the information contained in here and drag it into here. So that's what I did here with my rotation speed. As you can see, rotation speed, it is a float, it is editable, and it has a default value of 15. So on the event tick, once a tick, we're going to add rotation to our local actor, to this little cursor here. Target is self, because we're all contained. And we're going to take this delta seconds, and we're actually doing this is a scalar, because I'm going to scale the return value by the seconds. So that way it moves in time instead of just ticking nature. So take the rotation speed, throw it into the pitch, and then we connect all that up to the delta rotation. The result of that, I believe we can see here, yeah, if I simulate, see, we just get a nice little spin to it. Nice and subtle, and you can change the speed if you want. That's what that rotation speed is for. Make sure that you have checked this eyeball thing. So that way it is public, and that way you can actually access it inside the editor. Okay, so that's how we have our little cursor thing here. Now let's look at the actual material. What you saw here is this nice glowing material. Pretty simple. I imported a texture, and that texture is this the texture? Yeah, here it is. So I imported this texture, and he has an alpha that is exactly this shape. And we're just connected up to the base color, and then I'm going to do a multiply of the base color by a value of 20 for the emissive, and then the opacity is of course the alpha, and that gives us this. So very simple, nothing fancy, don't have to worry too much about that. So I'm done with that guy, we'll close him. Done with that guy. Sure, save changes. I probably move things a little bit. Go ahead and close him. Alright, so now there's the cursor, it's recalculating. So now we have the window itself. So this is the model for the window. So again, this is pretty simple. I'll show you the UVs right in the center there. I wanted it all contained in one texture. It was very important for this to work. I was originally going for making it a part of a texture that would slide along here, but that became kind of difficult, and I found a different way to do it. I still would like to figure out how to do it eventually. But you can see here, here's our model. It's nothing complex. It's just a curved surface. Let's turn that off. Curved surface, and it's curved in two directions. It's actually curved this way, and then of course curved this way. All right. So that was part of the challenge too. Is it's a multi-curved surface. It's not even just a singular curve. So, but now on this material, on this object rather, I want to have a glass material. So here's our glass, and I will link in the description. There was another tutorial I was following how to create this glass. So this is not my doing here. I'm just following a great tutorial on how to make proper glass with proper IOR and using a Fresnel fall off to get our refraction going. So this is just, a basic glass material. So this is not really part of what I was doing here, but I will link, credit where credit is due. I will link to who created this tutorial. Okay, so now we get over into the actual blueprinting for our object, and our object here, it's not too complex, but it is has a couple things to it I want to explain. So essentially this is again a scene object with a static mesh, and our static mesh here, absolutely no changes to it in here. It's just a curved window model that I imported, and then the material of material glass, and so that's the glass that I created. Now here's the magic down here is this part, the generate overlap events, yes, and the collision presets are overlap all dynamic. That's what I had to set it to. Okay, so with those two things set, we're done with the actual window. But now you notice that we also have the cursor here in the scene, and what this is this is actually our original cursor blueprint. This guy here, where we just made him rotate and all that. We come back to this guy. That is that whole thing dragged into here, just dragged and dropped as a child of the scene. And that's important because now we have the child here object will spin on its own local rotation, but now he's inside of this overall blueprint so that we can access him and we can move him around. We can do all kinds of things with him. So that's what this guy is here. You can see child actor component. All right. So now the real crux of the whole thing is actually inside the first person, because we need to be shooting lines. So let me explain what happens, and then we'll explain how the blueprint works. Okay, so we have our character in the scene here, and what we want to do is shoot a multi-line trace. So this is like an invisible laser line that goes out of our camera, and what it does is it says, tell me everything you hit. Never stop, go right through everything and tell me everything you hit. So what we're getting back to, the name of the window, and then we're saying if you also run into one of these objects, so one of these guys that have a particular name, then we're going to do stuff about it. But if you don't hit both of those things, we don't care. Okay? You can see the nice refraction with the glass working here from behind. So we're going to shoot a laser through the glass, and we're going to hit an object. And these two objects are Starfield Joe and Starfield Bob. So really the only important thing here is that this beginning name, Starfield. So anything in the Starfield that has this name at the very beginning of it, and exactly this name, will be an object that is clickable for this overlay effect. And then anything after it is anything you want to call it. I just called them Joe and Bob because we just needed two. Okay, so that's what we're doing, is we're shooting a laser. Then we're saying, okay, well, if I hit something, and then I click on it. I want you to do something different. I then want a constant line between myself and this thing, like a laser lock on, right? So that's another line trace. So we're going to do another line trace, and we're going to just do that over and over again. That's all we care about, is just get that line trace going back and forth, so that we can make sure that we know exactly where that object is at all times. And in doing that, tell me where exactly I'm hitting the glass, the exact position at which I'm hitting the glass, because that's where I want to move this thing to. Okay? So that's essentially what's happening. So now let's look at the blueprint. I wanted you to understand before we look at this, and then you're like, oh my god, I have no idea what's going on. Okay, so essentially what we're doing here is we're saying when I click the button, okay, when I left click, what I want you to do is get a multi-line trace. And I want this multi-line trace to go from my camera out a great distance. Mine's 50,000. That's total overkill. I was just testing. So just a line from me outward along my forward vector. So shoot a line where I'm pointing. Then what I want you to do is for everything that I hit, tell me the name of the actor. Okay? And I want to get the display name. And I want to look at the left 9 characters. If those left 9 characters are exactly this word Starfield, then, if that's true, see, then I want you to say, set this variable boolean of window display. So we're going to turn on the display for the window. Okay? And then here, if we've turned that on, then I want you to set this variable of a vector equal to the position of the object that I've clicked on, which comes from this object. Okay, so, whoa, what does this mean, right? So we're getting a line and we're saying, tell me everything you hit. But what it's saying is, if one of the things you hit happens to have this name at the front of it, then that means that we've hit something that is displayable on the window, okay? So we have this button here, this is a flag, true or false. We're going to start displaying something on the window. Okay, so what that means is then I need to get the position of the thing that we hit that is besides this. I want to get the position of the thing that you hit, all right? Because that's going to be the star or whatever it is that's out in the star field. So using that thing's position, I'm now always doing this if the window is displayed. So we just said, yes, we're going to turn on the display. Okay, so once a tick, if we're displaying something on the window, which we now are. Cool. We're going to do another multi-line trace. And we're going to borrow from up here, starting in our camera and going to the position of the thing that we hit, right? Because we want to go from ourselves to the star. And then we're going to say, for each thing in there, I want to get the name again, right? And saying, because we're hitting multiple things with this multi-line trace. That's the important thing still. So now that we have the position, we're going from ourselves to the star, but we still need to hit the window too. You understand? So we're going to take our multi-line hit and say, for everything we hit, if that thing's name is window, okay, true, then I need to get some things about the window. Down here I'm saying get everything that is of a certain class, that is of a child actor class. So we're saying get its name, if it's the window, then I need to go through all of its sub-objects. And I'm going to get some information about those objects. And what we're doing is we're going through the Windows sub-objects right here, child actor component. So I'm saying get everything, get all of the child actor components. So that's going to return us this, this blueprint here, which is for the cursor. Okay? So I'm saying go through those, give me all the childs, and then saying get the child components and go through them. And for each of those, which there is only one, I want you to set its position in the world. So one more time, I know it's a little complex. Trust me, this took a lot of time for me to figure out too. So when we shoot our second beam, really the difference between the first and second beam is the second beam is going from us to the star. But we still need to hit both the star and the window. So that's this for each. For each object in the series, go through them all. Count through them. So only the one time that we hit something that is the window are we going to continue this branch to start doing this. So that's really what that's for. Okay. Then for that same object, we're going to go through and get all of its children, which is how we get the cursor. Then we're going to say for every child, because we don't really know how many, we can't point right to one that I'm aware of. So we just say for every single child, get me all of those. And we know that the only one that we have in there is of this type, the child actor component. It's the only one we have. So for that one, being the target, we're going to set its world position. And then the position we need to get is here. This is the actual location in the world that we hit something. And that's going to be that spot on the window. Okay? So with all of that done, I know that's a little complicated, but that's how it works. Let's go back and take a look now. So we're going to take a look again. So as I'm walking through the world, nothing is happening right now. When I click, it's going to shoot a ray. And if it doesn't hit anything that verifies, then nothing happens. Okay? So nothing's happening. Now, if I click and I hit something, what it did was it shot through and said, get me the name of the window, get me the name of the thing. The name of the thing started with star field. So, okay, it's a valid target. Okay, now immediately start shooting a second ray. And that second ray says, always go from the person to the star object. So that's how we're staying in line with it. And it starts to look like it drifts, but that's the glass material doing that to you. So this second ray now is always getting the exact position that it's hitting the glass. So if I get closer, you can see that's the exact position it's hitting the glass, and it's putting our cursor at exactly that position. Now, because we're only changing the position of the cursor, our cursor continues to rotate around its local axis. So its local axis continues to rotate nicely. But the world position changes to the exact spot in which from me to this, see if I try and stare at it, there you go. You know, from that exact position, it's hitting the glass. And when I get closer, it appears to get bigger. I'm just getting closer to a physical object, that's all. If I get farther away, things look smaller, obviously. So that's what's happening. So we go back one more time, let's just review. I want to make sure that it's clear because it is complex. So again, I'm borrowing from the first person class. I turned off all of the gun shooting and all that. I don't need all that. So it's only when we click, we're going to shoot a ray. And if we hit something that qualifies, and here's our qualification, is it has to have the words star field in front of it. Okay? Then only if we do that, we're going to set a variable true, basically. And then down here, if that variable is true, then every tick, I'm going to now continuously shoot a line. And that line, I'm going to go through everything that I hit and say, if you hit a window, if you hit this object that is called curved window, then we're going to go through we're going to loop through all of the Windows child objects, all of its components rather, and we're looking for a child actor component. Then I'm going to say, get all of the child actor components, and for each one that you have, set its world position, basically. But there's only one, which is important, and that means we're setting its world position. And that also means that we don't have to have any sort of logic between turning one off and turning one on, because every time I click, I'm going to shoot a ray, and as long as it starts with the word star field, we're then going to get a handle to that object's position and say, okay, well, this is now the object that we're using. It just instantly switches. We don't have to have anything special. So for example, we could go into the world here and let's add a star, okay? Just for you guys, we'll add a star. Let me bring myself in the room here. Alt, bring myself over. Here's a star, okay? Now he's called Joe too, but you know, let's give him a bit of a better name. We'll call him, we have Joe and Bob, so let's call him Frank. Sorry about that, something hogged up there on my machine. So anyway, so we have our Joe, Bob, and I've added Frank here. So now if I hit play and we walk up and we can click on Frank, and there you go, Frank works as well. Now, if we give him a name that does not, so let's just say we called him Star Frank, we forgot the word field, he should not work. So if we hit save and play, now Frank won't work. See, Frank is not working, but these two guys should work just fine. There you go. So that's how it works. And I hope you guys have really enjoyed. And I want to say thank you again for all the support. It's been amazing. This environment here that I'm building has slowly come to fruition. Of course, all of this is just a quick and dirty sample here for you. It's not the actual room, but we're getting there and building each of these, test units. And then as I start to put them together, so let me know if you'd like to see kind of a step-by-step. I'm thinking about doing like a daily, not quite daily, but every time I sit down to work on it, show you the next thing that I've worked on, sort of in real time, and then also we still do the episodes. So let me know what you think, and as always, guys, keep practicing, get better, and I'll see you next time as the pilgrimage continues.